Well, hello, fellow surfers. We're ready for another surf report. We have another eclipse, the third of 3 eclipses. This one is a lunar eclipse in Capricorn. We're going to talk all about that, but I want to first show you the summary slide as we get into the various energies that we're going to talk about. We'll get into depth in the collective unconscious. And I have a new influence, a new measurement of an influence, which is the Schumann Resonance, or the Global Consciousness Project. And we're going to talk about that near the Dreambot run. And I'm going to show you what all that means. I'm really excited about it. But this energy this week is fairly straightforward. It's really just an extension of what we've been dealing with for the past couple of weeks. In fact, we have the same I-Ching hexagram, I-Ching hexagram 7, Army, organized discipline. It's that conflict thing and having to pick a side and all that. And it's definitely out there. It's no coincidence that these coins flipped out the same way as I think June 18th, except for the change line was different. Now in the astrology, like I mentioned, lunar eclipse in Capricorn. Now the moon is in detriment here, which means it's weaker. The emotions are weaker. What is that? We're going to talk about what that means in the astrology section. We have Saturn retrograde returning into Capricorn, returning to the place where he rules. And of course, we have the 5 retrogrades in there. We have a few sextiles and some squares to talk about, but we'll get that into the details later. The Dreambot is really kind of, it's half the astrology. It's taking chances. That's in there definitely. But there's also relaxing. So it dips outside of some of the astrology in there. Not to say that there's no relaxing influences in the astrology, but it's clear that the Dreambot, the collective unconscious, is on a continuum. And the continuum is, do I change things up, or do I just stay content in where I am? I left this bottom right here. This is our kind of our summary influence. It's like, do I move forward or do I release? Before last week we had, do I move forward or do I hold back? Now, instead of holding back, it's, should I release something? That's kind of the full moon. Full moons love to release stuff. If the sun gives, the moon receives. And that's kind of what that full moon is all about. And we'll talk about that when we get to the astrology, but let's get into the Dreambot first after this. Now I said the Dreambot, but I think I'd like to start with the Schumann Resonance. I found this graph here online, and let me explain this really quick for those of you who are not familiar with this. They have antennas around the world. You can see these in California, Saudi Arabia, Lithuania. And what they're doing are random generator tests, is to test the differences in coherence. And so what we have here is you can kind of get a hint for all the different antennas are starting fairly high a year ago. This whole sequence here is 1 year. So 1 year ago, there's kind of like a decline in coherence. And so, using the various works of the people who put this together, it looks like one of the emotions that might come into play here is anxiety and fear. Fear brings this coherence down. I don't think down is a great place to be. I think that's technically incoherent. It's random. It's more random. And we saw in 9/11, the way I understand it, when 9/11 kicked off, we had a coherence level very low. It plummeted. So anyway, I'm gonna make a little quick change here because you can see this purple line here. This coherence is from the purple line is from South Africa. And so one would have to ask, these peaks are quite a bit higher than other places. And so the obvious question is, what's happening in South Africa at this time or in the past? When everyone else was dealing with COVID, it'd be interesting to look at if you guys have time, do this for me. Look in South Africa for the time frame between November 2019 and May 2020. and see what was happening there, like the major news stories, and see if they're vastly different. What I'm going to do is take that out, and you're going to see how all the rest of them are all in the same line. They're going down, 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 particularly from November 2019 to May 2020. Right in this period, they're plummeting, and the coherence is plummeting. So fear is probably higher, which matches perfectly with the news that we have during that period. And suddenly, as you can see, the levels over here in this area, more recent, May and June, are very high. And that would make fear even less. So this is a really good, to me, a really good indicator that the collective conscious is breaking out. Now, can we match that with the dream bot? Now, one more thing I'm going to do here, just for giggles, is to see what this shrinks it down to just the last 2 weeks. And so do we see any sort of trend in the last 2 weeks? It was kind of trying to increase in coherence, but overall, I think it's staying the same, slightly lower. So fear is coming back, not tremendously. You can see this little spike here, this little graph. I don't know if you can see that. It's a tiny little dip at the very end. Are we concerned about it? Yeah, because it's a trend from just a little bit higher to a little bit lower. So fear might be coming back. That's the whole point of this slide. And in next sequences, hopefully we won't have to be so wordy on that. But just to give you a little idea for where the collective consciousness is. Let's get back to the collective unconscious with the collective dreams. And these are what people are dreaming about. And these are important because it shows you what's coming in the future. Even if we're not guessing what's coming in the future, this is what we're obsessed about as collective, because everyone's repeating. Repeating is the number one word in the dreams. And with these red arrows, this is more about time, like holidays and traditions, and it even talks about time. So repeating time, that's seeing things over and over again, maybe Groundhog Day. But the red arrows is not the biggest meme. The biggest meme is actually taking chances, the blue arrows, and then with a very close second, relaxing. So it's on a continuum. Are we supposed to be relaxing or taking chances? Taking chances is not relaxing. Is it kicking back or gambling and risking things? It's on the same continuum. It's all basically that same meme, but it's a continuum. All right, so let's go into the astrology. Now, what I forgot to do is get the highlighter, so I'll do that now. Now, right away, you can see there's not much happening in terms of changing signs. Now, the only thing is that what we missed last time was Saturn right at the very end was switching back into Capricorn, back into his home sign. So we're going to be talking about that. And then also we have squares and sesquisquares. Now, we don't represent sesquisquares on the daily thing, so this is the last time we talk about it. It's an agitation. That's what a sesquisquare looks like. It's more of agitation, and it's Venus and Jupiter, Venus and Pluto. And then you've got Mercury square Mars. We're going to cover all that, but the point is it's red and it's conflicted and it's obstacles and yeah, so that energy is definite all week long, as you're going to see. These top two, so Mercury in retrograde in Cazimi, square Mars. That is going to be, there's not going to be a lot of logical and reason to keep your Mars yang from just moving ahead. In fact, like being a warrior, wanting to fight. And so it could look impulsive right now. There's not a lot of logic associated with it because it's squared off. So watch out for impulsivity all week long. This thing is happening now as we get further, as Mercury gets further away from the sun as we progress through the week. You might get some rationality back, but I don't think Mercury is going to quite get into Gemini. I don't think at any point until it turns direct. I believe it's going to stay in Capricorn even when it starts going direct, but don't quote me on that. All right. The other thing that's going to stay consistent throughout the entire week is Venus sextile Mars. So there's an opportunity to fight for a relationship. Mars in Aries is all about fighting for something, taking something on, aggressive even sometimes, but this is an opportunity. It's a very beneficial sextile, and the opportunity is with Venus. Venus is going direct in Gemini, so friendly. And so there's an opportunity to harmonize conflict. Wow, nice. An opportunity to fight for a relationship, and even maybe fighting for some sort of contract or finance. Interesting. And then we also have Saturn in retrograde, and this one actually happened late at the last CIRF report, but just barely dips into Capricorn. So now we've got the triad, Saturn, Pluto, Jupiter, all going retrograde, all conjunct in Capricorn. Okay. And what you're going to see as this Neptune sextile is going to get even more pronounced with all three of those and get stronger as the week goes on. So as we go on, the fantasy, the escapism gets stronger and stronger, but there's an opportunity. That's the whole point here. Sextiles, 3 sextiles with Neptune. Dreamy planet Neptune is going to have some opportunities there when it has to do with policing, government, death and rebirth, and, expansive and wisdom, and long distance travel if you're doing that. So not all negative, not all conflicted, as you can see. The squares show up a little bit later. But as far as moon goes, that's kind of our front and center, because in just a couple days, July 4th in the evening, depending on where you are, it might be really early in July 5th. But the moon, as it gets closer and closer to its full moon status, it is in adjustment mode. So emotions are adjusting to all sorts of things and opposing Venus. So that's pretty challenging for the emotions. You're going to feel that, maybe wanting to explore, but not really. It's kind of sporadic, new information coming at you, having to adapt. It's like adaptable emotions, which for some people are very difficult. Now, Friday the 3rd, what we're looking at is a start of, disregard. Nope, all that same stuff. The big change now is the moon going over the south node in Sagittarius. And this one might influence you to get some insights, some wisdom. Wisdom, thinking Sagittarius is very wisdom oriented, especially as we get closer to Saturn. From the past, south node past, the emotions hovering over that south node is what sorts of insights do I need to know from the past? Other than that, not a big change from Thursday. Now, Saturday, this is July 4th, but this is the morning, 8:37 a.m. And as you can see, he's sort of T-square with Mars and Moon on the one side. So, but the trap is the fighting. We've already mentioned Mars in Aries, and it's conflicted. It's like double fighting because you got 2 squares on Mars in Aries. So it's like the energy is conflicted. Well, there you go. It's like army mode. It's warrior mode. It's organized, pick a side thing. And good news, the solution is not that. It's not to engage in the fight. It's quite the opposite of the influence. The influence is conflicted. The solution to all this will be quite the opposite. We'll get to that here in a second. Now, as we get into the July 4th evening, now we're in Central Time, at least in Northwest Arkansas, it's 11:44 p.m. And we have a lunar eclipse at 13 degrees Capricorn, 38 minutes. Now, recognize that there's no T-square here. We have Mercury still, Cazimi technically is within 8 degrees in retrograde. So the thoughts and the logic and the rational has a flavor of nurturing and mothering and Cancer, but it's subdued. And so the primary here is the ego, the sun in Cancer, shining onto the full moon with the shadow on the eclipse. And you can see this should be able to see this in North America at 13 degrees Capricorn. And so what we need to know is that emotions are subdued here because the moon is in detriment. In detriment means that, the moon, the mothering, it's more of yin. The moon is yin in the archetypical world and the metaphors and the analogies. But Capricorn is very goal driven, so you don't really have that maternal. I mean, sure, you can have a goal of being maternal, yes, of course, but it's weaker because it doesn't really go together all that well. Instead of staying home, which is where Cancer is, it's opposite Cancer. Instead of staying home and taking care of the kids, we're off like feeling like we have to go achieve something and go up the mountain. So that's the overall kind of analogy. But what sorts of things are we feeling? The moon at the time of the eclipse is not quite in conjunction with the triad here. But Capricorn is very strong, and so that does strengthen the force of the Capricorn and the emphasis on it, which reduces the emotions even more, increases the weakness on the moon. So if the sun beams out and gives, the moon receives. So this is a great time, I'm talking full moon, not necessarily eclipse, but full moon to release something, to give something, sacrificing something. Why did ancient sacrifices happen on full moons? Well, this is why. Is this going to be crazy energy that we normally see on a full moon? Yeah, probably, because it's probably going to feel that inner conflict is, I feel so indifferent, but yet Capricorn it's grounded. It makes you want to get engaged. But yeah, if you don't have your emotions to engage in, it feels sort of indifferent. So it's that I should be engaged. Well, that's an inner conflict. So I think that's the overall theme of the feeling that you're going to have. But with the eclipse, there's going to be an opportunity. And with all the eclipses, are kind of like planting seeds for a later time, especially with Capricorn, because Capricorn is future looking. It's the goal oriented. It's looking towards the future, looking up the hill, and it wants to climb it. But it also challenges you. And it's ruled by Saturn. Saturn tends to have challenges for us, but it's not just random challenges. It's there. Saturn is there. I'm talking about Saturn because it's ruling Capricorn. It's there to help chisel your sword. It's to sharpen you, to make you a better person, evolve. Think about when that's happening, you're getting better, stronger, faster, etc., improving your life. And but here's the paradox here for this eclipse, is because it's in Capricorn, it's going to be some sort of objective, but I think it's going to be part of the releasing. As you're releasing something, the goal is met, or the goal is started, or the goal is seated in the start by releasing something. That could be emotional, that could be a memory, that could be a very material thing as well. But some people talk about 6 months, a year. Other specific times include when this full moon's happening in Capricorn again. So whenever that's happening is what you're seeding for. I don't necessarily have a specific time for you on this case. But anyway, it's releasing, and understand that it's in the releasing that you find the achievement or establish the goal. By releasing, I achieve. There you go. Sunday the 5th. It's all about Neptune's opportunities. We talked about this earlier, and it only strengthens. And now Neptune also gets a sun trine Neptune. So ego gets easily influenced, easily lost in the Neptune web of illusion and dreams. It's not all necessarily a negative thing, but you just have to watch it. It's easy to lose yourself in the fantasy. And there are opportunities here. That's the main focus today on Sunday. And that's the day after this eclipse. So watch out for your dreams. Get into states of meditation. Get into the inner world, the introspective world. But still, this is not the solution. This is just for Sunday. Don't waste that opportunity, especially as the moon starts to get closer to the triad. Man, we've got some mega mystical opportunities there. All right. So Monday, emotions emerge past our triad out of Capricorn into Aquarius. And so we're no longer in detriment. The emotions are emerging, as they're not indifferent anymore. And we start to probably feel a lot more thoughtful or recognizing a collective concern. That's Aquarius. Meanwhile, there's a square over to Uranus, but it's temporary and it's causing conflict with the changes that you see in the material world, period. On Tuesday, the big theme here is that ego is having to do a balancing act. Now, Mercury is back to being strong, but in retrograde, thinking retroactively in Cancer. But meanwhile, the Sun, which is still trine to Neptune, is now having to do balancing stuff with Pluto, death and rebirth, and then Jupiter, expansive, wisdom, long-term travel. So ego is going to have to balance that, and that could be a source of conflict. On Wednesday, it's pretty much the same. There's that same trine for the ego and opposition. All right, it is now time to get into the I-Ching reading. I'll take off the highlighter. The coins were cast for July 2nd through the 8th, and we get hexagram 7 again, earth over water. We saw this on the last two CIRF reports ago, June 18th. Organized discipline. I'm not going to read all of it because most of you are probably familiar with this one, which is a feeling of army. Feel powerful. It's an inner power. It's a strength and discipline, but it seems like you feel like you have to be a part of something else, and it's not winnable unless you do. And you got to pick a side. And man, the world has never been so polarized as it is right now, and it's part of that is by design. When life is in balance, evil impulses are checked by human decency. So that's a good one to remember. The wind excites 1,000 different instruments. Each song is played in its own way. Now I want to read the top line. That's where the change line was. In times of victory, generosity is the cleanest reward for those who have helped you achieve success. Avoid making complicated promises in exchange for good work on your behalf, and never give rewards based on feelings alone. Rewards have as much to do with the future as it does the past. So what I'm reading there is that the major influence in astrology was the lunar eclipse. Don't be releasing in order to gain, but it's in that releasing, just like this line is saying, that the rewards have to do with that future goal, but you're not doing it just to get the reward. Okay, not doing it to achieve success. All right, so that's it. We're ready for the solution. Let's do our sponsor. We'll be back. And yes, I still haven't had time to change that waiver thing. But if you're needing help of any kind, life coaching, psychotherapy, we take insurance. Not that life coaching has, and astrology, none of that has the ability to get charged to insurance. But psychotherapy definitely does. Go to intervention.com. Now, look at the solution. According to I-Ching, it's youthful folly. It's the mountain over water. It's be on guard for the careless or rebellious attitudes, characteristic of inexperience. It's about being a child again, looking at the world through brand new eyes, looking at each experience as a teacher. The wise realize that experience, especially difficult experience, is a most powerful teacher. That's exactly what we're doing here this week. And as we look at the Sidereal Astrology and the Rave, we're looking at, let me get this on here. Now I have to turn the tropical, I have to turn it to match the sidereal and where it's supposed to be. So that's why these things look sideways. But Sun in Cancer and Moon on the opposite side in Capricorn, right there, 13 degrees, takes us to hexagram 38 in the Rave Mandala. We're going to read that a little bit more. We're starting to get into the solution from the astrology. And then for sidereal, Sagittarius. All right, let's see what 38 nets us. It's the gate of the fighter. Oh, great. So the solution is to fight? Well, not really. Listen to this. Gate 38 in the Rave Mandala. The fuel to fight, to struggle, is an energy. The stream of intuition begins in this gate. The stream of intuition begins in this gate. In other words, the struggle is where the intuition is. I skip all that. To have this definition, to be stubborn, to struggle is ultimately healthy. Then struggle is the only way to know. In other words, you're going into the struggle, you're engaging with the struggle in order to know the answer, in order to get your knowing. All right, it's time for the big summary slide, and we'll start with the top here. I even have the Schumann Resonance on here, global consciousness effort here. So slightly a little bit more fear. Yeah, it's do we move forward or do we release? It's an inner conflict. That's the point here. It's another conflict. It was matched with the word army in the I-Ching. All right. Now the solution is multifaceted. We have the I-Ching for youthful folly, reduce rebellion and idealism, increase openness and curiosity. We have the Rave Mandala, which is where the lunar eclipse was, hexagram 38, gate of the fighter, but using the struggle to know. It's not go out and fight. It's using the struggle. It's acknowledging that the struggle is there so that you can know. Okay? And we'll get to why this is all important here, because when we triangulate all of this, I'm going to put it all together. It's going to make a lot of sense to you. Sidereal is Sagittarius. Sagittarius is known for its expansiveness, freedom, wise, wide-ranging, very optimistic. But you want to avoid his impatience, tends to get confrontational, maybe picky and superficial. So here's the overall triangulation. All right, you ready? This is putting all these different mechanisms together for the following advice. Feeling inner conflict might manifest in only seeing the conflict around you. So in other words, the feeling of inner conflict will probably get projected out to the other world, and then you'll be saying, oh, look how everyone else is conflicted. All right, so that's enough there. But recognize that each one of these conflicts is a struggle. And recognizing that you have a struggle should kick you into the Rave Mandala hexagram 38, which says, observe the struggle in order to know, but don't participate in that. Don't participate in the struggle. Observe it, learn it, and don't engage in it. Okay, that's called diffusion in ACT therapy. Then reduce conformity, idealism, rebellion, impatience, all the things that I just talked about in Sagittarius. Enhance your openness, your curiosity, your learning, and your higher wisdom. That's the Sagittarius too. Don't engage in the struggle, but allow it to highlight what's important to you. Learn from this week. Now, this is what's interesting. This summary statement, this last statement, came to me during a therapy session earlier this morning. As a matter of fact, this is before I made the overall triangulation. So I found it odd that I was giving the ultimate answer to the triangulation in an earlier session. So here it is. Wisdom is the applied meaning from experiential knowledge. And we do this in an iterative approach by going back to being curious, being openness and curiosity and learning. That's a mind state that we need this week. And watch yourself getting rebellious, getting idealistic, judgmental. Stop all that and realize that in that struggle, you go deep into that struggle. Let it be there. Recognize it. Not necessarily honor it, but don't fight against it. There's another struggle. So allow that struggle to take place. See both sides of it, especially if it's in yourself. And as you do that, learn from it. And there you go. There's your wisdom. Well, that's not complete yet. There's your knowledge, experiential knowledge. Then from there, you can wonder, now, what do I need to do from this meaning? What do I need to do? How do I need to behave based on what I'm learning? That's wisdom. So when you apply the meaning to your real life from the experiential knowledge, that's wisdom. All right? Whew. Now, let me get back to the astrology so that you can have that last slide. And let me know, anybody, if you've got any questions, comments, etc. Absolutely grateful that you're here. And have a great eclipse. Have a great July 4th. And be curious and learn. Learn from the struggle. All right? Take care, everybody. We'll see you next week, next Wednesday.